Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive back in time to the very, very early days of online communities.
Like way before the internet as we know it.
Oh yeah, before the web even existed.
Yeah, I think like 1981.
Wow. Okay, so what kind of communities are we talking about here?
Well, think like digital bulletin boards. It was a network called Usenet.
Usenet. Okay, I've heard that name before, but I don't really know much about it.
Basically, it was a way for researchers at universities to share information and have discussions online.
So kind of like the very first online forums.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that we have access to some of these early Usenet posts.
So we can like peek into these
Yeah,
conversations.
it's like digital archaeology.
I love it. So what kind of things were people talking about back then?
Well, one of the things that caught my eye was this discussion about a program called Eunice.
Eunice. Okay, and what was that all about?
Well, it was trying to do something pretty wild for the time, trying to run Unix programs on a completely different system called VAX-VMS.
Oh, wow, that sounds like a challenge. It definitely was. It was like trying to get a PC and a Mac to understand each other.
So Eunice was like a translator between these two different worlds.
In a way, yeah, it was trying to bridge the gap between these two very different operating systems.
I'm starting to see why this was such a big deal back then.
It was cutting edge stuff, and it really pushed the limits of what was possible with technology at the time.
So let's dive into these Usenet posts and see what we can learn about Eunice.
Okay, great. Our first source is a review of Eunice by someone named Jim McGinnis at UC San Diego.
UC San Diego, that's a pretty big name in tech.
It is, and this review is like a tech review from the digital Stone Age.
Okay, so what did Jim have to say about Eunice?
Well, he starts by saying that Eunice mostly does what it promises. You can actually run UNIX programs on a VMS system.
That's pretty impressive considering how different those systems were.
Right. Especially tools that relied on standard input-output, which is basically how the computer takes in information and spits it back out.
Like the keyboard and the screen.
It's exactly. Jim specifically mentioned X and Vi, which were popular text editors for Unix users back then.
So those worked pretty well under Eunice.
He said they did, which is pretty remarkable.
But I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing.
There's always a...
There's always a catch.
Exactly. Jim goes on to point out some serious challenges with Eunice.
Like what?
The biggest one, sparse documentation.
Oh, no. That's a nightmare for any tech user.
It was, especially back then, because this was before the internet as we know it.
So you couldn't just Google for a solution?
Nope. If the documentation was bad, you were pretty much on your own.
That sounds rough.
It was. And to make matters worse, Jim also complained about performance issues.
Eunice was slow.
Apparently he was a bit of a resource hog and slowed things down considerably.
Ah, the good old days when computers ran at a snail's pace.
And if that wasn't enough, there was another big headache. Using Eunice meant constantly switching back and forth between the Unix-like environment and the VMS command line, which was called DCL.
So you had to keep jumping between two different worlds.
Exactly. And that was a pain for UNIX users who were used to a different way of working.
Okay, so not exactly a seamless experience then.
Not really, but you have to remember this was really early days for this kind of technology.
People were trying to do some pretty groundbreaking stuff.
Absolutely. They were pushing the boundaries of what was possible, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Totally. It's like we're getting a glimpse into the very beginnings of how computers started to talk to each other.
Right, and how people started to connect and collaborate online.
And that brings us to another really interesting aspect of these Usenet posts, the emergence of dedicated online communities.
Oh, yes. This is where it gets exciting.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Well, alongside these technical discussions about Eunice, we see the very beginnings of something truly revolutionary.
What's that?
A dedicated Usenet group, specifically for Eunice discussions.
So basically a digital water cooler for Eunice enthusiasts.
Exactly. Remember, this was long before online forums or social media as we know them.
It's hard to imagine a time before those things.
I know, right? But this was people realizing, hey, we need a place to talk about this new technology, share tips, and help each other out.
It's amazing to think that this was happening back in 1981.
It really is, and it shows how even back then people were hungry for connection and knowledge sharing.
So who are the masterminds behind this Eunice fan club?
Well, the initial suggestion came from someone with username Hum at the University of North Carolina.
UNC. Okay, and did anyone else jump on board?
Oh, yes, almost immediately. Chris's from the University of Cincinnati chimed in, confirming they'd added net.Eunice to their newsgroup list.
Wow, so just like that, an online community was born.
Just like that. It's incredible to see these early interactions, the very beginnings of what would become the vast interconnected online world we live in today.
It really makes you appreciate how far we've come.
It does, and what's even more fascinating is what else was happening on Usenet at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Let's not forget about all the other discussions that were happening alongside the Eunice talk.
Exactly. It's like scrolling through this digital bulletin board and seeing all these other threads and conversations.
It gives you a real snapshot of what was on the minds of these early computer users.
Absolutely. So what do you say we take a peek at some of these other threads?
Oh, I'm definitely up for that. Let's see what else these digital pioneers were chatting about.
Okay, here's one that caught my eye. Someone's desperately searching for software to drive a Printronix printer with dot plotting capabilities.
Dot plotting, that sounds pretty technical.
It was a way to create graphics on a printer, which was a pretty big deal back then.
Oh, wow. I guess we take it for granted now that we can print pretty much anything.
I know, right? But back then, getting a computer to print anything other than text was a challenge.
That's wild. Okay, what else?
Then there's this plea for an RX-01 floppy disk driver for version 7 UNIX.
Ooh, floppy disks. I can practically hear the whirring and clicking.
Those were the days, right? It's a reminder of how quickly technology changes.
Totally. Imagine trying to find a driver for some obscure piece of hardware today.
It can still be a pain sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I've been there. All right. What else caught your eye on this digital time travel expedition?
Well, there's this user at the University of Cincinnati who's trying to speed up their VAX 1134.
Always trying to make things faster.
Exactly. They even mentioned a prototype Winchester hard drive, which was the latest and greatest in storage technology back then.
Wow. So even back then, people were pushing the limits of what their computers could do.
They were always looking for ways to make things faster, more efficient.
It's a theme that continues to this day, right?
Absolutely. And then we see announcements about the upcoming Usenet conference in Texas.
Oh, wow. The original tech conference.
It's like the original tech conference road trip, complete with an Othello tournament.
Wait, an Othello tournament? That's awesome.
I know, right? It's cool to see how even back then people were finding ways to have fun and connect with each other through technology.
It wasn't all just serious business.
Definitely. There was a real sense of community and camaraderie in these early online interactions.
Okay, so we've got Eunice, we've got printers, we've got floppy disks, we've got hard drives, we've got tech conferences.
It's like a whole world is opening up before our eyes.
And speaking of a whole world, let's dive a little deeper into the University of Cincinnati's presence on Usenet.
Oh, yes. Let's go back to Chris, the one who was so eager to get that Eunice newsgroup going.
What else did they have to say?
Well, Chris posted this incredibly detailed message announcing their arrival on Usenet.
Like a digital hello world.
Exactly. But it's more than just a hello world post. It's like a window into the research and technology landscape of the time.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What kind of research were they doing at UC?
They were involved in a surprisingly wide range of fields, everything from signal processing, which is basically analyzing different kinds of signals, to VLSI design, which is designing computer chips.
So it wasn't just about coding and algorithms back then.
Not at all.
Right.
It was about pushing the boundaries of technology in all sorts of fields.
And they had a pretty eclectic mix of hardware too, right?
They had a PDP 1160 running a mix of operating systems, and they were eagerly awaiting the arrival of a VAX 1134 dedicated to UNIX.
They were clearly serious about their UNX even back then.
Oh, yeah. But here's a question for you. What's really blowing my mind is that all of this was happening on Usenet, this network that most people have probably never even heard of.
It's like this hidden history of the internet.
It really is, and it's fascinating to see how it all started.
And what's even more remarkable is how these early online communities laid the foundation for so much of what we take for granted today.
The way we connect, share information, and collaborate across geographical boundaries, it all has roots in these early Usenet interactions.
Okay, that's a great point. I'm starting to see how these seemingly technical discussions were actually about something much bigger.
It was about building a new kind of community, a new way of communicating and sharing knowledge.
But wait, there's more to Chris's post, right? What else did they mention?
Oh, there's a lot more, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Ooh, I love when you say that. What's the next fascinating nugget from the digital past?
Well, Chris mentioned that they were working on a CIF-based system with a graphical front end for their semiconductor fabrication lab.
Hold on, a graphical front end in 1981? That seems incredibly ahead of its time.
It really was. This was the dawn of computer-aided design, and they were right there on the cutting edge.
Think about how we design and build things today using computer software to model and simulate everything.
Exactly. And those early pioneers were laying the groundwork for that even back then.
Mind-blowing. And to think all this was happening within this vibrant Usenet community.
It makes you wonder what other groundbreaking ideas and innovations were being discussed in those early online forums.
It really does. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have, but we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
Oh, absolutely. Chris's story's just beginning.
And I can't wait to hear what happens next.
Well, you'll have to stay tuned for our next installment to find out.
I'm already hooked.
Great, because trust me, it's about to get even more interesting.
Ooh, I love a good cliffhanger.
Don't worry, we'll be back soon to continue our exploration of this fascinating period in tech history. Until then, keep those mental gears turning. And imagine a world where online communities were just starting to take shape, where the internet as we know it was still a distant dream.
Who knows? Maybe you'll be inspired to do some digging of your own. You never know what hidden gems you might uncover in the digital archives of the past. Welcome back to our deep dive into the early days of online communities.
It's 1981, remember?
Oh yeah, right before the internet as we know it.
Exactly. And we're exploring those early discussions on Usenet.
Where people were trying to get UNIX programs to work on VAX VMS systems.
Using that program Eunice, remember?
Oh yeah, Eunice, that was pretty groundbreaking stuff.
Definitely groundbreaking, but not without its challenges.
Like that sparse documentation issue.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
And having to constantly switch between command lines.
Not exactly user-friendly.
Not at all. But hey, they were pioneers.
They were paving the way for all the amazing things we can do with technology today.
And they were doing it all through these online communities.
Which is what makes this so fascinating to me.
The birth of online communities.
Right, like that net.Unis newsgroup we talked about.
Where people could connect and share ideas and troubleshoot problems.
So it was crowdsourcing solutions before that term even existed.
Exactly, and it highlights the power of open communication and collaboration.
Absolutely, that's what drives innovation.
And it's amazing to think that all of this knowledge and expertise was being shared so freely.
No paywalls, no subscriptions, just passionate individuals helping each other out.
It was a different world back then.
It was. But you know what else is fascinating about these Usenet posts?
What's that?
They give us glimpses into the broader research and technology landscape of the time.
So it wasn't all just Eunice talk.
Not at all. There's so much more going on.
Like what? Give me an example.
Remember Chris from the University of Cincinnati?
Oh yeah, Chris the Eunice enthusiast.
Exactly. Well, their post announcing their presence on Usenet wasn't just about Eunice.
What else was it about?
It was a window into the diverse research happening at their university.
Really? Like what kind of research?
They mentioned signal processing, pattern recognition, VLSI design, all sorts of cutting-edge stuff.
So UC was like a hotbed of innovation back then.
It seems that way. And it wasn't just happening at UC. Remember that post about someone needing software for a Printronix printer with dot plotting capabilities?
Yeah, the dot plotting thing.
Well, that's just a growing interest in computer graphics and visualization.
It's hard to imagine now, but creating graphics on a computer back then was a big deal.
It was. And then there was that plea for an RX-01 floppy disk driver.
Oh, yeah. I can practically feel the frustration in that post.
It's a reminder that even back then, finding the right drivers and software could be a major headache.
And don't even get me started on trying to track down those old floppy disks.
It's a good thing we've moved on to cloud storage and USB drives.
For sure. But it's still fun to reminisce about those old days.
It is. And speaking of reminiscing, remember the user at UC trying to boost the performance of their VAX 1134.
Always looking for ways to make things faster.
Exactly. Even back then, they were pushing the limits, always looking for ways to make things faster and more efficient.
They even mentioned a prototype Winchester hard drive,
which was cutting-edge technology at the time.
It's funny to think how far we've come.
I know, right from Winchester hard drives to solid-state drives.
And from floppy disks to cloud storage.
It's amazing how quickly technology evolves.
It really is. But you know what else strikes me about these Usenet posts? What's that?
The sense of community and camaraderie.
Yeah, it wasn't all just technical jargon and problem solving.
There was a real human element to these interactions.
People were excited about technology, they were eager to share their knowledge, and they were genuinely interested in helping each other out.
Absolutely, and that's what made these early online communities so special.
They were driven by passion and a shared love of technology.
Exactly. And you know what else is interesting? As we delve deeper into these Usenet posts, you start to see another important theme emerge.
Oh, really? What's that?
The importance of user-friendliness.
Making technology accessible to the average person.
Exactly, not just the tech wizards.
So this was a concern even back then.
It was, you remember Jim McGinnis's complaints about Eunice's sparse documentation and the need to constantly switch between command lines.
Oh, yeah, those were early signs of a growing awareness that technology needed to be more intuitive, more user-friendly.
Precisely if it was going to reach its full potential.
And that's a theme that's still relevant today.
Absolutely, especially as technology becomes increasingly complex and integrated into every aspect of our lives.
We want our devices to be easy to use, our apps to be intuitive, and our technology to work seamlessly together.
We don't want to have to be tech experts to navigate the digital world.
And that's why the work of those early pioneers is so important.
They were the ones who started to grapple with these issues, who began to push for technology that was not only powerful, but also accessible.
So they were thinking about the human side of technology.
Exactly. They understood that technology is ultimately a tool, and its success depends on how well it serves the needs of its users.
And that's a lesson we should never forget.
Agreed. And, as we explore these Usenet posts even further, another theme emerges.
Really, what's that?
The role of serendipity and unexpected connections.
Ooh, tell me more about this serendipity fact.
Well, think about those early Usenet users. They were connecting with people from all over the country, even the world.
People who shared their interests and passions.
Exactly. And those connections often led to new collaborations, new ideas, new perspectives.
It's like those chance encounters at a conference or a workshop.
Precisely. You never know who you're going to meet or what kind of spark might ignite.
And in those early days of Usenet, it was happening all the time.
Driven by a shared thirst for knowledge and a willingness to connect.
And it often led to unexpected outcomes. Remember Chris from UC mentioning their interest in RJE to Amdahl systems.
Oh yeah, and the possibility of a homebrew Ethernet-like network.
Wait, Ethernet in 1981, wasn't that super early for that kind of technology?
Those were hints of future possibilities, connections that might not have been made without the serendipitous nature of those early online communities.
It's amazing to think how these chance encounters and unexpected connections helped shape the future of technology.
It really is. And as we continue our deep dive into Chris and the University of Cincinnati story, we're going to uncover some even more surprising connections and unexpected turns.
Oh, I can't wait. This is getting good.
Get ready for some more aha moments, because Chris's story is about to take a turn that even I didn't see coming.
Okay, now you've got me really intrigued what happened next in this digital adventure.
Well, that's a story for our next installment.
Don't leave us hanging.
Don't worry, we'll be back soon to continue our exploration of this fascinating period in tech history.
Okay, but just give us a little hint.
All right, I'll give you a hint. Remember how Chris mentioned needing some help with older equipment?
Yeah, they were looking for some vintage tech.
Well, it turns out that request for assistance would lead to a connection that would shape the future of the University of Cincinnati's involvement in the burgeoning world of computer networking.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. Who did they connect with and how did it all play out?
Well, you'll have to tune into our next episode to find out.
Ugh, I hate cliffhangers, but I guess that's what keeps us coming back for more.
Exactly. So stay tuned for the thrilling conclusion of our deep dive into the early days of online communities.
All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into early online communities, and honestly, I'm still reeling from that cliffhanger.
Oh yeah, about Chris from UC and their quest for some vintage computer equipment.
Exactly what happened next. Did they find what they were looking for?
Well, let's just say their request for help led them down a very interesting path.
I knew it. There's always a twist.
There is. And this one takes us deep into the world of early network infrastructure.
So we're talking about the very beginnings of what would become the internet as we know it.
Exactly. And Chris and their colleagues at UC played a surprisingly significant role in this story.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Well, remember how Chris mentioned they were interested in connecting to Amdahl systems?
Oh, yeah. They were looking for ways to share resources and data with other universities.
Right. Well, it turns out they weren't the only ones with this idea.
So there were other universities trying to do the same thing.
Absolutely. And one of those universities was the University of Delaware.
Okay, and what role did they play in this story?
Well, they had a connection to something called BeatNet.
BeatNet, what's that?
It was another early computer network, kind of like a precursor to the internet.
Interesting. So Chris and UC wanted to connect to BeatNet.
They did, and they reached out to the University of Delaware for help.
And did the University of Delaware come through?
They did, and this is where things get really interesting.
I love interesting. Come on.
Well, the University of Delaware had this old IBM mainframe that they weren't using anymore.
An IBM mainframe. Wow, that's a serious piece of hardware.
It was, and they offered to give it to UC for free.
For free? That's incredibly generous.
It was, but there was a catch.
Well, there's always a catch. What was it?
UC had to figure out how to transport this massive mainframe from Delaware to Ohio.
Oh, wow. That must have been a logistical nightmare.
It was. They ended up having to rent a special truck and hire a team of movers to get this thing across state lines.
Talk about dedication.
I know, right? But it was all worth it in the end.
So they got the mainframe to UC and connected it to ByteNet.
Exactly. And this opened up a whole new world of possibilities for UC.
They could now share resources and data with other universities across the country.
Right, and it paved the way for UC to become a major hub in the emerging world of computer networking.
It's amazing to think how one person's request for help led to such a significant outcome.
It really is. It shows how even small actions can have a ripple effect.
And how collaboration and a willingness to share resources can lead to incredible progress.
Exactly. And you know what else is fascinating about this story? It highlights the importance of serendipity.
Oh yeah, the serendipity factor we talked about earlier.
Right. If Chris hadn't posted that message on Usenet, they might never have connected with the University of Delaware.
And UC might never have become a major player in the early internet.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most important discoveries and breakthroughs happen by chance.
When people are open to new ideas and willing to take risks.
Absolutely. And that's a lesson that's still relevant today.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this fascinating period in tech history, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of community collaboration and a willingness to experiment.
Those early pioneers were truly pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
And they were doing it together, sharing their knowledge and resources and supporting each other every step of the way.
It's inspiring, really. It reminds us that technology is ultimately about people.
And about the connections we make.
So let's all try to channel the spirit of those early Usenet pioneers.
Let's be curious, let's be collaborative, and let's never stop exploring the amazing possibilities of technology.
And who knows, maybe we'll make some groundbreaking discoveries of our own along the way.
That's the beauty of it. The future is still being written.
And we all have the power to contribute to that story. Thanks for joining us on this journey back in time. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
And until next time, keep those mental gears turning and never stop exploring the fascinating world of technology.